Sometimes I get comments asking what kind of substrate I'm using in one of my tanks. And I usually just answer that comment and let them know what I'm using. But I figure it's time that I just talk about the different substrate that I'm using in all of my tanks. Let you know which ones I like and what I like about them, and then which ones I don't like so much and what I don't like about those. Also, it's important that I let you know my very favorite substrate of all, which nothing compares to. I'm going to be kicking this thing off with my African cichlid tanks, what kind of substrate I'm using in those. But as I've said before, I'm a photographer for the Native Forward Scholars Fund, and when I go somewhere for them, I like to share my experience. And just last week I came back from New York City, which was an amazing trip, and I saw some things that I hadn't seen before. I finally got to walk around Central Park, which is beautiful. On my way out of this place, I also saw something that reminded me of my fish, and it was these pigeons that were surrounding this couple that was sitting on a bench, and they were feeding him. And the lady even had some of these birds right in her hand, not afraid at all while she was feeding him. And it so much reminds me of my fish. Cichlids are almost exactly the same way, except they're 10 times prettier than these birds.
New York City also has two of everyone's favorite things, McDonald's and Star Trek, side by side. Okay, on to the Africans. Your substrate choice for African cichlids is pretty serious business. It's more than just an aesthetic for these nutjobs. They don't care about much, these simple fish, but what they do care about, they're extremely passionate about. Sex, if you have females in the tank, which I don't. Eating North Fin pellets, which I do have. Drinking beer, kicking ass, and sifting sand. Nothing else. If you omit one of these, then it's a big deal to them, like taking away the very water they breathe. The wrong substrate, and you're going to break their little psychopathic hearts. I use Carib Sea aragonite in both my African cichlid tanks. Alcatraz, which you've been looking at with my peas and habs, and Attica, my Mbuna tank. And I use it for a few different reasons. It looks pretty cool if you like white or a very light tan for your substrate, which it looks white in the tank anyway, and I do like that. Carib Sea aragonite is easy to find, so you can get it at just about any Petco, and it doesn't break the bank if you have a decently smaller sized tank. I don't know your budget, but 125 gallons or so, and it shouldn't kill you. In fact, I just checked their website and it's on sale right now for $7 for a 10-pound bag. Not as good a price as my all-time favorite sand, which I'll get to in a minute, but still, could be a lot worse. And I don't get the kind of aragonite that has live bacteria in it. Never needed it since I just steal bacteria from one of my other tanks anyway, plus it looks like the granule size is a bit smaller than the one I use. And I learned the hard way not to go too small with your substrate grain size. Sucks big time, bro. If you have an African cichlid tank, then chances are pretty good you're using wave makers to push all your detritus toward your filter intakes to keep the bottom of your tank nice and clean. And this is the way to do it because it takes literally no time for you to keep it pristine. But if you're using a really tiny grain size, the current created by those wave makers isn't just going to push the detritus around, it's going to blow your sand to the other side of the tank as well. And if you don't have wave makers and you're doing gravel vacs, you're going to hate life because it's so easy to suck up that miserable sand as well. My first tank, I had pool filter sand. Super cheap, but it was so small, it was a complete nightmare. Wasn't long before I got rid of it. A 2mm grain size is ideal. You can go a little smaller or a little larger, but be careful you don't go too large or your cichlids are going to start to hate you because they need to sift sand. Suck it right in through their mouths and out their gills. All the time. Aragonite does another thing for my African cichlid tanks, or at least I thought it did. These fish like high pHs. We're talking like the lower 8s if possible, and this sand will help raise it and keep it there naturally. My pH is sitting at about 8.4, but it turns out the aragonite has nothing to do with that. Nope, I was believing a lie. I could go bare bottom, the tank's not me, and they would still be sitting at about 8.4. And that's because although my tap water comes out at the mid to lower 7s, it's full of CO2 in the pipes, and once it's exposed to the air in the rooms, much of that CO2 is released, which causes the pH to go back up to its natural state, which in my case, it goes up a lot. So the sand isn't doing much for me there, but it might for you if you have a lower pH water from the tap. One thing though, I don't actually know how long it takes for this sand to lose its pH buffering ability, so you may need to eventually either replace your sand or go with something like crushed coral in a mesh baggie inside your filters to buffer the pH. Nothing lasts forever, I guess. So yeah, Carib Sea aragonite is my favorite sand for African cichlids. It's the right color, the right size, and it's not too expensive. And if you need it to buffer your pH, it'll do that for you too. Plus, my boys love it, and that's the most important thing.
Before I get to the American Cichlid tanks, let me just talk about some of the substrates that I've used before that didn't work for me at all, and then some of the substrates that I haven't used because I just know they wouldn't work. And maybe this will save you some time when you're deciding what to put in your tanks. The first one that comes to mind was a substrate that I used for my 23-gallon Episto tank, which is now the home of Eel Longoria, my lovely tire track eel. I saw that Troy from Cichlid Bros used this stuff called Sunset Gold Sand from Carib Sea in his 180-gallon tank, and it looked pretty good. But when I put it in my Episto tank, it was just way too fine. Gravel vacs sucked this shit up like it weighed absolutely nothing. Like I said, around 2 millimeters is ideal in my opinion. This stuff is 0.25 to 1 millimeter in size. Plus, I was just never really fond of the color in person either. It's too goldish, as the name might suggest. My experience with pool filter sand was pretty similar. Used it in my first Peacock cap tank, a 75-gallon Aquarium. Hated every second of that. Wave makers blew it into oblivion. Dust in the Wind, Kansas. That song is about this sand. I've never used gravel as a substrate, but you can probably guess what I think about it since I'm mentioning it here, right? Even if you don't have sand sifters, it's just way too big. Poop and detritus get stuck in it even with wave makers. I really don't like the look of larger pebbles like that anyway. Maybe you do. There are some others too, like bare bottom and dirted tanks, but those are more like Fishkeeper fetishes in my opinion. No substrate's good enough for my tanks, they think, so I'm just going bare bottom. Or the,
oh look at me with all my plants in my dirted tank, full of nutrients because I'm so good with plants.
Those types of people. Well, you can just take your beautiful planted tanks that I'm not skilled enough to keep and just shove them right up your old wazoo, because my guys would eat them all to shreds anyway. You've probably noticed that I'm not really afraid to talk about my disasters and my failures with fish keeping. Well, I'm going to tell you about one of those right now. So not too long ago, like a couple months ago, I moved all 10 of my baby Altafrons from the 20-gallon grow-out tank to the 55-gallon grow-out tank because they were big enough. They're eventually going to go in San Quentin over behind me here. But when I moved them over, a couple days later, I noticed that there were only 9 of them when I had 10 when I moved them. And I figured one of them just got like eaten and then, the bones buried or something after he died. Well, just recently, I told you that I had a sick fish over in Alcatraz and I was treating him for parasites. Well, he wasn't improving, so I moved him over to a hospital tank. And when I caught him, I used 2 nets, and one of those nets had something funny in it. And you're probably guessing what that was. So I looked at it and I took it out, and here's what I found. Right in there, right in that net, was Altafrons number 10. If you're catching a lot of fish and moving them to another tank, then make sure that you count them all, and then also check your net to make sure you don't have any fish in there.
It's always sad when we lose one of our fish, especially when it's because of something stupid that we did. But you have to live and learn from it and just move on. So let's move on to my American Cichlid tank substrates. This is where my substrate researching skills absolutely shine with the brightness of 1,000 suns. I'll get to that in a second, but first have a look at my 180 with its gentler American Cichlid types. I have Torpedo Beach by Carib Sea in here. Ordered it right after I discovered how sucky Sunset Gold Sand was. And it's great. It's a good pebble size and I like the white sand, so pretty good. Okay, now to the big one. San Quentin, 10 feet of pure American Cichlid bliss. I was looking for a great sand to put in this baby. I didn't want to make any mistakes. I wanted something brownish and more Amazonian looking. But everything I found was extremely expensive, like $15 to $20 for a 5-pound bag. No thank you very much. But on my trip to Seattle, I stopped by a fish store called Aquarium Zen, and although I didn't buy any of their great sand, the store owner mentioned something called lapis luster sand that might do the trick. It's supposed to be exactly what I was looking for, and it's extremely cheap. Well, I couldn't find any of that, but my research in looking for it led me to a place called Clean Blast that had something similar. It's just called Clean Blast Sand. Anyway, the closest place for me to get it from where I lived was 300 miles away in Tacoma, Washington, but at only like $10 for a 50-pound bag. It's incredible. Shipping, as you can imagine, was a little steep for as much as I would need in a tank like San Quentin. But it was well worth it for me to take my super hot Prius all the way over there just to pick it up. So I did. And this sand is absolutely incredible and every bit worth the trip to get it. They had 2 different types and I bought both of them and mixed them up. This sand is extremely clean, as the name might suggest, and it's the perfect size and weight. it really forms a good surface in the tank, and it feels really like packed down nicely. Now this is what I use in all my non-African cichlid tanks. I just love it. Best sand I've ever used, and one I'd highly recommend for anyone who wants a darker, natural looking substrate. I even bought a couple of extra bags just in case. Might even be able to line the bottom of my new aviary with it. I've really taken a fancy to birds after my visit to New York. Getting out of cichlids and moving into pigeons. This is gonna be sweet.
All right, let me know what kind of substrate you're using in your tanks and what you like and don't like about it. And then check out this video right over here that YouTube thinks you're gonna enjoy. And YouTube knows everything about you, so if it thinks you're gonna like this video, you're gonna like it. Until next time, peace out.